Only 48 days remain until Donald Trump takes office, and the global situation over the past week can only be described as unprecedentedly chaotic. During his visit to France on December 7th, President-elect Trump told President Macron, "It seems like the world is a bit upside down right now, and we're going to talk about that." In today's video, we focus on analyzing the geopolitical situation surrounding the collapse of the Syrian government. Jihadist groups entered Damascus early on December 8 without encountering any resistance from the Syrian army. Videos quickly emerged showing armed fighters entering both the presidential palace and President Assad's private residence in the Malki neighborhood. Reporter Danny Mackey reported that Syrian military and security forces around Damascus fled, changing into civilian clothes to escape. There was no fighting in Damascus, the city had been abandoned, and by tomorrow, everything will be under the opposition's control. The catastrophic collapse of the Syrian Arab army over the past 10 days, coupled with President Assad's hasty departure early Sunday morning, marks the end of 50 years of rule by his family and signals a risky new beginning. A highly unpredictable new era for Syria has begun, with the immediate risk that the entire country could disintegrate, much like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya before it. Will Syria fragment like Iraq and Libya after their leaders were overthrown? Will there be widespread acts of revenge killings? Will Christians, Alawites, and Shia face mass persecution and extermination? Will the country, already battered by over 13 years of brutal civil war, descend into sectarian and ethnic chaos? Will harsh Sharia law be enforced at gunpoint? The pressing question now is whether Syria will see the establishment of a stable transitional government or fall under the rule of a terrorist organization. All these questions remain unanswered, potentially creating a black hole of instability in Syria from which numerous global terrorist threats could emerge. One certainty is that a U.S.-designated terrorist has emerged as the de facto ruler of Damascus and Syria. Abu Mohammed al-Jolani, currently the leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham HTS, has a $10 million bounty placed on him by the U.S. for information leading to his capture. He is listed as an international terrorist and was previously associated with both al-Qaeda and ISIS. Will the transition from Assad's regime to an al-Qaeda-affiliated one proceed peacefully under the governance of a group imposing its version of Islamic law? Nothing is inevitable now, and darker days may yet lie ahead. Amid Syria's governmental collapse, Israel has continued to strike various sites within the country, and reports suggest that Israeli tanks have advanced further into a strip of southern Syrian territory in the Golan region. Buildings are burning in parts of Damascus and surrounding areas. Al Jazeera reported rumors that Israel might have struck what is believed to be an ammunition depot near the airport. Earlier on Sunday, Israeli media stated that the Israeli Air Force had bombed weapon depots in southern Syria and Damascus to prevent them from falling into the hands of opposition groups. Meanwhile, U.S. Central Command CENTCOM announced on Sunday that the U.S. had conducted dozens of significant airstrikes on ISIS camps across central Syria following President Assad's overthrow. The operation involved B-52 bombers, F-15s, and A-10s, targeting over 75 locations. The deployment of B-52s indicates the operation's enormous scale. However, this raises a critical question: why did Washington delay pursuing ISIS for so long? Why wasn't ISIS targeted earlier, months, or even years ago? Over the past 4 years, the Biden administration had not conducted a campaign of this magnitude. A theory suggests that with Assad's government toppled and Damascus now under the control of HTS jihadists, ISIS is no longer a necessary tool to pressure Assad and Russian forces in Syria. Thus, the U.S. has now begun addressing the issue of terrorism. It's worth recalling that during the Obama administration, there were accusations of facilitating ISIS's rise by supplying tons of weapons to Islamic rebel groups, which formed the backbone of the opposition against Assad's regime. In a statement on December 7, Trump criticized former President Obama's policies, claiming they caused chaos in Syria and enabled Russian intervention in the country. Interestingly, Western mainstream media celebrated Assad's downfall, praising the jihadist rebels while overlooking HTS's apparent links to al-Qaeda, both past and present. This is despite the numerous atrocities HTS committed during Syria's civil war, which contributed to ISIS's emergence, multiple mass casualty terrorist attacks in Western Europe, and a wave of migration. Even Aaron Y. Zellin, an expert from the Washington Institute for Near East Policy and author of an article in the UK's The Telegraph, has lobbied for the HTS leader to be removed from the U.S. list of foreign terrorist organizations over the past 2 years. The reality is that thousands of families are crammed into their homes, terrified because they don't know which Islamist faction controls their neighborhood. This starkly contrasts with the scene of a few hundred people celebrating in the central square. Currently, many families from the former government, including Christians, Alawites, and Sunnis living in the capital, are fleeing toward the Lebanese border. They have little hope for a Taliban-style regime, despite al-Jolani's declarations that HTS plans to respect diversity and pluralism. Following the collapse of President Assad's government, reports from the Wall Street Journal, citing Russia's TASS news agency, indicate that he and his family are currently in political asylum in Russia. The primary reason for Assad's rapid downfall is often attributed to the inability of his key allies Russia, Iran, and Iran's proxy Hezbollah to assist Damascus, as they are bogged down in other conflicts. In his December 7 statement, Trump also emphasized this point, stating that Russia could no longer defend Syria because it has been preoccupied with a nearly 3-year-long war in Ukraine. However, this explanation needs to be more accurate. Iran, for instance, could have mobilized forces to support Assad if given the time. Other options included the Syrian army forming an alliance with the Kurds against Turkey-backed forces. Yet, the critical factor was time. The Syrian army collapsed and surrendered so quickly that Iran had no opportunity to deploy reinforcements. The rapid disintegration of the Syrian military is believed to stem from internal decay, corruption, and growing societal discontent with Assad's regime. Moreover, rumors suggest that the events in Syria could be part of a cunning plan by Putin, potentially trading Syria and Assad as leverage in some deal with Turkey or Gulf states. However, this remains speculation. With the rapid developments in Syria, despite Russia's insistence that everything is under control and claims of ongoing communication with the opposition, it is clear that this represents a severe blow to Russia's reputation. But the damage goes beyond just reputation. Russia's military bases in Syria are critically important, not only for maintaining its presence in the Middle East but also as logistical hubs for Russian forces operating in Africa. The future of these bases remains to be determined. The White coastline, home to Russia's bases, is still beyond the control of HTS rebels. Reports indicate that Russia has begun evacuating some of its regional military personnel. However, such an operation requires time and necessitates the new government's approval to ensure both a time frame and security commitments for the bases. Representatives of the opposition have expressed a desire to maintain positive relations with Russia. Yet, HTS leader al-Jolani has declared his intention to see all foreign forces, including those of the US, Turkey, Russia, and Iran, leave Syria. Moreover, it is difficult to imagine HTS agreeing to Russia's continued presence, given that Russian forces supported Assad and recently conducted bombings and attacks on HTS positions. Even if Russia insists on retaining the bases, it lacks sufficient forces to defend them by force. The coastal region of Latakia, where these bases are located, is predominantly inhabited by Alawites and Christians, groups traditionally viewed as pro-Russian. However, there must be an indication that these communities are prepared to resist the new government. Meanwhile, the U.S. also has bases in northeastern Syria, and Trump has plans to withdraw American troops from the country. For the U.S., even if it leaves Syria, Washington can still exert influence through the powerful Kurdish forces it backs. In contrast, in Latakia, no local forces loyal to Russia can resist HTS. With Syria's collapse, Turkey emerges as the biggest beneficiary, wielding the most significant influence over the rebel factions now in power. In contrast, Iran faces the most significant setback, losing its direct connection to its proxy ally Hezbollah in Lebanon. For Israel, while the weakening of Iran and its proxies is a positive development, there is concern that the new government in Syria, comprising former al-Qaeda rebels and other Islamist fighters backed by Turkey, may not be friendly toward Israel. Regarding the war in Ukraine, Assad's downfall offers fresh arguments for the Ukrainian government and Western hawks, urging Trump to avoid compromising with the Kremlin and to push for NATO's ultimate victory. They argue that Russia is weak, evidenced by its failure to protect Assad in Syria. However, Trump's latest call for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine dismisses this hawkish view. He remains committed to negotiations to end the war quickly, emphasizing that Ukraine's situation is far more critical than Syria's. In his December 7th statement, Trump referred to Syria as a mess and declared, "They are not our friends, and the U.S. should have nothing to do with that country." Of course, certain factions may use the Ukraine conflict to stir up challenges for Trump, including attempts to launch counteroffensives or destabilize Russia internally. Whether such efforts will succeed remains to be determined. However, the period leading up to Trump's inauguration promises to be tumultuous. The impact of Syria's collapse on Russia's position is multifaceted. On one hand, it may push Moscow to achieve a decisive victory in Ukraine to compensate for the reputational losses suffered in Syria. Russia continues to escalate its military advances in Donbas and Kursk. On the other hand, Assad's downfall has once again highlighted to the Kremlin that it faces numerous challenges beyond Ukraine, and resources for foreign wars are severely limited. This sentiment was reflected in Trump's statement that now, the Russians could be like Assad, forced to leave, and that might be the best thing that could happen to them. Russia has little interest in Syria besides their intervention, making Obama look foolish. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again in our following broadcasts.